Hello and welcome to Children of Misery. In this video we're going to be going over the general setting of the project and giving you a guided tour of the map and the districts that make up the city. This is a dark urban fantasy world that I've been developing as a tabletop setting where all of the players' characters are children. It's a gothic magic industrial setting through the lens of childlike innocence where the whole story will take place in one city. And I use the term magic industrial because it's not exactly steampunk. There's still coal burning furnaces, clockwork machinery, and such, but most of the actual technology is powered by magic and specific magic infused items. Don't get me wrong, there will still be plenty of morbid plot lines, perils, and scares, but I'm not going for outright horror or gore. Think Dark Crystal levels of spooky. So what you're seeing now is a time-lapse of me making the current city map that I use as a reference when I'm doing world building, just to get a sense of where everything is. And I'm not sponsored or connected in any way, but I actually used a map-making game called Ex Novo by Sharkbomb Games to help me flesh out the city, all of its history and its chronological development. I tweaked the rules a bit since I already had a pretty good idea of the setting I was going for, but it definitely helped make it a bit more realistic and full of quirky imperfections that add character. I'll add a link to the game in the video description if you want to check it out for yourself and support some indie game makers. When planning this setting, I was pretty set on having the whole story center around one city, mainly because when you're planning a tabletop campaign, you often have to build entire countries or even continents with the expectation that your players will be traveling around this huge, wide-open world. But one of the problems with this scale is that you often have these kind of one-note towns that players will visit for a session or maybe one story arc, and then abandon it to go to the next plot point. And you don't really get to fully flesh out the towns to the point of knowing every little detail. So by scaling down, I can plan down to specific neighborhoods instead of entire towns and add a lot more detail, make it feel more lived in, as well as adding recurring characters. Plus, the players already live here, so there's an investment in the world, and as anyone living in a large city can tell you, there's always something going on in places that you've never been to, waiting to be explored. As you probably have noticed, everything in this city has a sad or morbid name to match the dismal theme and aesthetic. Eventually I'll make a short video for each of these districts and go more in depth about the major buildings and landmarks, industries, people, and more. There is one exception to the sad name rule, which is the candy bar, which is the candy/toy shop that all the kids hang out in. While planning the layout of Misery, I went to my local library and I did a lot of research on city planning and design, and it's wildly complicated, but I loved figuring out each little area and imagining the people that live there, where they go, and all the things that they need to live in this city, all of the resources around them. Because Misery is such an old city, it has to contend with a lot of existing historical structures as it expands and improves. The street layouts are imperfect, and each district has irregular shaped areas that the infrastructure just kind of has to work around. And to me, that really brings out the realism that I see in actual cities. Misery is the coastal capital city of the country of Dremlock. As it stands, there are 20 districts, 21 if you include the Forlorn Forest to the north. The City of Misery can be divided into 3 sections: the land north of the Headache River, the land between the rivers, and the land south of the Heartache River. The city can also be divided between the lands inside and outside the walls. The walls were constructed early in the city's history as a way to protect the body of the fallen titan Droma from other nations seeking raw magic material, a resource that would come to shape the city for years to come. In general, the further north and inward you go in Misery, the more well-off and upper class the city is. The center districts are more commerce and industrial focused, and the southern districts are more lower class and residential. Beginning our tour in the west, we have Outsider Outskirts and Murder Market. There is some farmland as you head away from the city, mainly to support and supply the markets nearby. which greet travelers headed into Misery from the Western Highway. Notable landmarks include a popular restaurant called Crocodile Tears, and the headquarters of Welchmertz Wares, the franchise of general stores that can be found throughout Misery. Next, we have Pensive Park, which is sort of the central park of Misery. I wanted to add something like this to help contrast the extremely dense city center and give players an option for a change of scenery. Heading north, we have Bleak Borough and Crestfallen County, which is a less dense, almost rural area that holds Misery's major lumber mills. Landmarks include the Languishing Lumber Company, Tragedy Academy, and Cheerless Chapel. At the very top of our map is Horrendous Hills, which is the most reclusive upper crust area in the city. Manors and country clubs like the Grieve and Getaway make this an extremely exclusive club to get into, so let's hope you have the proper connections. Breaching the inner wall, we head into the beating heart of Misery. Woeful Ward is by far the busiest, densest, bustling part of the city. Home to the country's Capitol building, this is the center of city and national government. This district can be overwhelming to some with all of its tall buildings and narrow streets. You can also find lavish balls and other large-scale events at Lullaby Heights, with a perfect view of the Titan Skull. Crossing the Headache River, we land at the Tears of Misery. This is a unique district as it is mainly managed by the Church of the Dreamer and treated as holy ground. Embedded into the Melancholy Mountains is the giant skull of the Titan god Droma. Sitting atop it like a foreboding crown is the Melancholy Monastery, the former palace of the now disbanded monarchy turned holy site. This district marks the beginning of the twin rivers that run throughout the city, as well as the center of the Everstorm that swirls above Misery. Also found here is Tearful Tower, by far the tallest building in Misery. This looming clock tower can be seen from just about any point in the city and serves as a landmark compass guiding citizens and tourists alike through the maze-like streets. In our center districts, we find Joyless Junction and Painful Precinct. This is the major industrial and manufacturing center of the city. The Forge, as it has come to be known, is a large collection of mining facilities, factories, and warehouses solely devoted to the collection and processing of marrow, a raw form of magic that seeps out of the Titan's remains. It is highly unsafe in its concentrated form and must be thoroughly cleansed from the rivers, or else risk contaminating the city's water supply and aquatic wildlife. It is then processed and used in the creation of magic items that are traded all around the world. Further down is Suffering Station, the HQ for Misery's police force and investigators who keep law and order in Misery. Headed down to the commercial districts, we have Dismal District and Lachrymose Lanes. This is one of the largest areas of trade in Misery. Dismal District has a number of residential areas, but is also home to the headquarters of the Pensive Postal Service, Agony Abbey, one of the oldest churches in Misery, and the city's chief financial institution, Bereavement Bank. Walking through the lanes, you'll find local shops, restaurants, as well as a number of grifters and pickpockets if you're not careful. As mentioned earlier in the video, Lachrymose Lanes also holds the happiest place in Misery, the Candy Bar, a large combination candy, soda, and toy store. This was mainly a place made out of necessity since I couldn't have the main kid characters hanging around in a traditional tavern. They needed a third space away from home and school where they can discuss their plans together. Across the Heartache River lies Pessimist Province. This district is largely residential but contains a few key settings for the story of the campaign, including St. Anguish Academy and the Odious Orphanage. Remorseful Region is largely the same and includes Unhappy Hospital, Misery's largest medical facility. Back within the walls, we have the strangely shaped educational district of Broken Heart Belt. Unfortunate University holds many labs, research facilities, and lecture halls. It is here that students from around the world attend to learn everything there is to know about the cutting edge of magic, arcane theory, and the creation of magic items. Continuing east is Saro Suburbs, a more upper middle class neighborhood and an extension of university property. This district also holds Lugubrious Library, the largest collection of books and historical documents in the country. Finally, we come to the southern districts. Poverty can be observed in various areas of all districts, but it is most concentrated among the southern belt. Tormentious territory is largely a mining district collecting iron, coal, and other natural resources from deep within the mountains. Many in this district lived in poverty and very rarely see the sunlight. The Morbid Mines is the most well-known of Misery's mining operations for being extremely dangerous. Many end up at Unhappy Hospital for broken bones, and Parish for broken souls. Suicide Sector is aptly named as it would be very foolish to wander here alone. Various gangs roam the streets vying for territory and power. The most notorious gang in Misery is the Death's Row Gang, who can often be seen hanging around the Hangman's Noose, a large seedy dive bar for tough customers and shady deals. Further down is Homicide Hollow, a brutal arena that hosts dangerous and illegal entertainment, though many officials turn a blind eye. Back toward the sea lies Depressing Docks. Here you can find the Gloomy Grotto, a natural cave system carved by the sea and a popular tourist destination. This district is also home to Misery's largest population of fishfolk, who have made themselves a thriving community down by the docks. Finally, away from it all lies the Brooding Isle. A statue called the Weeping Woman faces the sea and welcomes new visitors to Misery each day. This island also holds Misery's largest prison, Pernicious Penitentiary. But not all things here are sad, since down by the docks lies Crybaby Carnival, which opens for the warmer months of the year and major holidays as a popular day trip destination by citizens and tourists alike. Its isolation out on the somber sea makes this a unique district with its own local customs. And that concludes our tour of Misery. I hope you've enjoyed learning about the setting, and let me know in the comments if you have any suggestions for more places to add to the map. I'll be doing more in-depth videos on each of the districts in the future, so keep an eye out for that by liking this video, subscribing, and hitting that clock tower notification bell. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you in the next video.